So, in 2005, Capcom released what could be hailed as one of the greatest games of the generation, Resident Evil 4, focusing more on an action horror style and delivering a top-tier fun experience. And to follow that, some genius at Capcom decided, oh, people want action, say less, and gave us a game suffering from an identity crisis. But in 2017, they released the most important Resident Evil yet. Then 2 years later, they came back with another huge success by remaking RE2, and in the same year, releasing Devil May Cry 5, one of the best, if not the best, hack-and-slash games of all time. So, it's safe to say that Capcom came back from the depths of hell, releasing banger after banger after banger. And then, in December of 2019, a trailer for Resident Evil 3 Remake was released. The future is brighter than ever. There's nothing that could go wrong here. Right? Well, in April of 2020, RE3 was released. With half of the original's locations and puzzles cut from the game, the most scripted action sequences since RE6, and the shortest mainline Resident Evil, with a lousy 4 hours to beat. All of that while costing $40. But after all these years, where does RE3 rank in the list of these games? Is it actually the worst in the series? Well, to answer that, we better get started. We begin the game with a prologue introducing Raccoon City and the quick spread of the virus, thanks to Umbrella. Then, the main character, Jill Valentine, starts having a nightmare about becoming a zombie. The reason for that goes back to RE1, where Jill and her team were sent to a mansion where the virus had originally spread. Eventually, Jill wakes up and receives a call from a fellow STARS team member, warning her to get out of the apartment. But what he really wanted to say is that you should probably subscribe and join this channel. Then, with zero respect for privacy, the Nemesis barges in. I run away to the next apartment and block the door with a wooden wardrobe, which is apparently enough to stop him from breaking in. Huh? That stops him? Then, Nemesis pops up again and we gotta run. But because this sequence is actually scripted, so you can just wait in the corridor forever and nothing will happen. But anyway, he breaks a wall and lifts me from the head. Again, for some reason he doesn't kill me, instead he throws me into safety. And we get another scripted sequence. I escape the stalker and meet with Brad. What I actually really liked about this intro is how they showed us the early stages of the outbreak. It reminds me a lot of the intro to The Last of Us. And I really wished that they focused more on that because you only get to see the city for like an hour or something. Anyway, we enter a bar to escape the zombies, and instead of Brad joining me for the escape, this mentally challenged man lets himself get bitten to buy me some time, and so I escape. Jill steals a gun from a dead police officer. Now the gunplay is the exact same as RE2. There are no changes at all, except that they added a dodge button which makes the game a lot less intense. And for some bizarre reason that I can't understand, they removed the ability of cutting up zombies. Come on, I want to see his bowels. But anyway, Jill gets on a roof where she seeks the help of a chopper. But then as usual, Mr. Aura himself shoots it down and runs after us. Jill gets in a car, starts it and proceeds to run Nemesis over. She fails and Nemesis starts choking her. I didn't know Nemesis was a fetish type of guy, but either way, I hit the gas pedal and fall off the building. There's no explanation as to why Jill survived that, other than her body is made of pure steel. Then the car explodes, but Nemesis is still aura farming. And out of nowhere, a guy named Carlos fires a launcher at him. Then we run away to the subway station. He reveals that he works with Umbrella as a soldier. Jill gets mad because Umbrella is the origin of the outbreak. So Carlos gets confused because he doesn't know who Umbrella actually is. We get to the subway, where a few survivors are sheltered. We meet an old man that has a grudge against me. But he dies soon, so no one cares. Now, it's very obvious that these people are actually trying to do good here. They got civilians sheltered and a plan to save them. So why does Jill act like a complete asshole? Is it me, or is Jill extremely unlikable for most of the game? In fact, let me tell you a quick story. I played this game before playing RE1, so this Jill was my first introduction to the character. After completing it and finally playing RE1, I was astonished by the difference between the two Jills. There is barely anything in common between them.
I know what a radio is.
Where's this attitude coming from? I get that the events of the first game changed her, but it's not an excuse to transform a compassionate, low-key badass into a sassy, full-of-herself superwoman. In any case, to get the subway going, I'm gonna have to go topside to restore power and plan a route for the train. While I was going to the power station, I meet a friend of Carlos who was bitten. He gets shot by another UBCS soldier called Nikolai, who claims that he would have turned. Anyhow, I reach the power station and meet a new type of enemy, the kinky kind. Ew. So I restore the generators and burn their nest. And while I was peacefully on my way to plan a subway route, my lovely friend insists on joining me there. So he starts following me, yet again. But I quickly find out that I could cripple him with one grenade. Yes, a single grenade that sometimes doesn't even kill normal zombies is able to stop the nemesis for some time and make him drop a supply crate. Okay, Capcom, if you say so. Also, one comment I want to make is how this game has barely any content, man. It's actually sad. Even the puzzles, if you can even call them that, are nothing but fetch quests that require zero brain power to solve. Apparently, the original had a ton of hard puzzles that felt rewarding, but here, nah, it's all gone. Regardless, I plan a route for the subway and head back to the station where I notice Nemesis transforming zombies into whatever. This is getting out of hand. So I reach Carlos where he informs me that the train is gonna need around an hour to finish maintenance. That is when we get attacked yet again by the Nem. Jill realizes that he's after her and not the subway, so she takes a detour to buy Carlos some time. And at the end, she ends up in the sewers. Oh, more sewers. Yup, if you've seen my Resident Evil 2 video, you know just how much I like me some sewers. And while I was washing myself with sewage, a special someone greets me. But unfortunately for him, I'm not interested in making new friends. I enter a room and find a grenade launcher. Does it make sense that there would be a grenade launcher in a random room in the sewers? Not really, but I digress. Now, the sewer section is extremely short. It serves zero purpose. There are no cutscenes, no plot points, nothing. The only reason it even exists is probably because most of it is reused assets from the sewers of RE2. They just wanted some content because this game has nothing going for it. They just keep throwing this recycled trash of an enemy at you like 10 times in 15 minutes just to make this section a bit longer. Anyway, I contact Carlos where he reveals that the train has been fixed and I should head there. So I calmly start climbing a ladder to get topside and... oh, of course, the nemesis for the 57th time. And yet again, he lifts me by the head where he could easily crush me in, but he chooses to throw me into safety. At this point, I genuinely believe he's on my side. I go to a construction site where I head to the roof. As usual, the nemesis joins me for a boss fight. I fire endless amounts of explosives at him where he finally succumbs at the end. And then, well, this happens. This scene has got to be a joke. A lot of people claim that this game is overhated and it's actually a good game, yet they slander RE6 for the same exact reasons that made this game bad. At least RE6 had an actual lengthy campaign with 4 different unique stories. I mean, the stories sucked ass, but that also applies to this game. They're not much different, are they? So after defeating the nemesis, I head to the subway station, where I find a familiar place. I already have too much on my plate, so Mr. X can have as much fun as he wants with Leon. I enter the gun shop and meet Kendo, the same Kendo from the previous game. It's nice seeing him being friendly despite his daughter being bitten. I take the nearby gates key and head to the subway. While on my way, you guessed it, but this time he has an RPG. His shots are easily dodgeable, but the last straw, the final blow, the nail in the coffin is this scene. Absolute cinema. Suddenly, there's a huge head rolling down the street. God, I don't know what's happening. Finally, I regroup with Carlos and enter the subway. Carlos won't be joining me as he has a secret mission, and so we head to safety. Yup, it's him again. Nikolai blocks us in and betrays his leader, so the UBCS leader blows Nemesis into pieces. I'm sure this is gonna be the last we see of him. And at last, we switch perspectives and play as Carlos. Carlos has a mission in the RPD, Again, reused assets equal less effort. We also get to see how Marvin got bit. Turns out he was attacked by Brad, which gives us more insight into his advice to Leon about killing anyone, including turned officers. Now this guy Brad was a pain in the ass to kill, but upon killing him, we are rewarded with a STARS ID card, which will give us good loot in the future. Finally, we enter the police station. We are back.
Where'd that cop go?
Now Carlos has a job, and it is to find Dr. Bard, a scientist who Umbrella needs in custody. So the first step is to get into the STARS office and acquire more info on the doctor's location. Getting to explore the RPD again as Carlos was fun, despite it being short. But the main thing about this section is the huge amount of enemies they throw at you. I really hate when a game does that. I already talked about it in my Evil Within video, but it's a very cheap way of increasing a game's playtime. But either way, the liquor returns, and so does my chronic depression. I finally reach the STARS office, where I get into contact with Bard. He claims that he's trapped in a nearby hospital, so my mission is to get a hold of him there. But before that, Jill contacts me and informs me of the incident, and then we switch back to Jill's perspective. It turns out Jill was the only survivor, so we head on to cross a bridge. Then, out of nowhere, the Nemesis is back. So yeah, he attacks the bridge, then a comical chase sequence starts, and at the end we reach another boss fight with him. Variety? What do you mean you need variety? Just add another Nemesis fight, god damn it. Yeah, they absolutely destroyed the legacy of the Nemesis. This guy is a laughing stock in this game. His encounters are annoying as hell. Anyway, we kill him, then try to leave the place. He wakes up and infects Jill. Nikolai comes out of hiding and is amazed by Jill's performance, because he wants to sell the data of this encounter. Half a day later, Carlos shows up and takes Jill to the hospital, where Dr. Bard might be able to help. And so here we are, the hospital. My favorite section in this game by a mile. A big building consisting of dozens of rooms and a clear objective. It also has a creepy atmosphere reminiscent of the old Resident Evils. However, I do wish that they used a better introduction to the main enemy of this place, the Hunter Beta. No need for a cutscene. Let it be gameplay, people. But it's a minor issue, so let's continue. While searching for Dr. Bard, I find a room with 2 Hunter Betas. I'm the best in town, so I kill them without breaking a sweat. At last, I found Bard, except that he's been shot. Carlos goes through his personal computer and finds out the truth.
Proceed, Chief Nathaniel Bard, September 29, 11 p.m. All of Raccoon City's suffering began with the release of a biological weapon known as the T-virus. My employer, the Umbrella Corporation, engineered this virus, and they ordered my team to develop a vaccine, which we did. Now, I keep samples of this vaccine here in my office. The rest of it is stored underground. But those sons of bitches at the board, they want to destroy it. They don't want the world to know what they've done. So they're trying to erase all evidence that the virus ever existed.
My God, Jill knew all along. And she trusted me anyway.
Him punching the computer unlocked the door that contains the vaccine. I acquire it and get attacked by another beta. After killing it, I get to Jill and inject her with the solution. Tyrell barges in to turn the TV on.
Attention all citizens. The contagion spreading throughout the city has been designated uncontainable. On October 1st, Raccoon City will be completely destroyed in a missile strike. All residents capable of rational thought are urged to evacuate immediately.
We learn that the government is wiping out Raccoon City and the virus with it. And for some reason we have to defend Jill's room from the hordes of zombies out there. Some COD zombies ass minigame. But anyway, we defend the place and head on after Nikolai. Then we wake up as Jill, where we see Carlos turning into a zombie. It turns out it was just another nightmare. She then wakes up and talks to Tyrell, where he reveals that Carlos went after Nikolai down in the lab, so we go after them. We reach the facility and notice Nikolai in the upper levels. In order to get there, we need to restore the elevator's power by collecting 3 fuses. This is probably the only big puzzle in the game, so enjoy it while it lasts. At last, we insert the 3 fuses and go up the elevator. But Nikolai has dipped, so now we gotta go after him. But before that, Tyrell arrives and reveals that he had talked to the government, where they asked for a vaccine sample in order for them to not nuke the city. So we go after Nikolai, and Tyrell gets attacked by tentacles. The Nemesis is back at it. Jill runs away and blocks the Nemesis from entering. And now, the last stretch, the lab. This is where the overuse of the enemies is apparent. Take this room as an example. There are dozens of zombies. You have to go up, get an antigen sample, then go back down below the stairs into another section with a room overcrowded with zombies, and finally acquire the test tube. And after all that, when you finally try to leave, you are met with 3 more hunter betas. I mean, I don't mind engaging in combat, but when the game has like 3 short sections with barely any content, and the only way you could find to justify the price tag is adding a million enemies, it just doesn't sit with me that well. Anyway, we mix the solution and create the vaccine sample, where the Nemesis attacks us again with his tentacles. The game throws another QTE at us, and we escape. Then, we enter a boss fight arena. The Nemesis joins the battle and breaks the platform. Jill is holding onto her dear life, but the vaccine falls from her pockets. Nikolai takes the vaccine to himself where he can sell it. We fight the Nemesis and burn his ass with acid. I go after Nikolai for the vaccine and the Nemesis is back. Very shocking indeed. Nikolai takes off and leaves us with our #1 fan. Jill tells Carlos to follow Nikolai and retrieve the vaccine. So we fight Mr. Tedious for the last time. Put a huge overpowered weapon that's conveniently near the boss fight in his mouth and blow his brains out. At last, we reach the roof and notice Carlos knocked out on the ground. Nikolai beats both of our asses and destroys the vaccine. Then Carlos arises from the dead and fights Nikolai. At the end, we put a bullet in his chest. Then we ride the chopper and leave him to die in the nuke. We ride off to the sunrise, where Raccoon City is wiped from the map. Then Jill has her own monologue.
I felt empty and cold as the heat from the blast washed over us. All this death wasn't caused by a monster-making virus. It was greed. Human greed. I decided then and there, the ashes of Raccoon City would be Umbrella's ashes too. I would end them, once and for all.
Resident Evil 3 Remake. Huge potential, considering how beloved the original is, but the result is a half-baked game with barely any redeeming qualities. The game is way too short. I finished it in under 4 hours. Mind you, I took my time here, I didn't rush for the most part. Most of the original's locations have either been heavily cut or outright removed from the game. The Nemesis is a joke. The fact that most of his encounters are scripted is actually stupid. You fight him like 5 or 6 times outside of the scripted sequences. That alone is the epitome of an enemy being tedious. Jill is nothing like the RE1 version, as I've said before. The focus on action and spectacle over atmosphere and horror is never the answer for a Resident Evil game, and the main character plot armor is laughable here. So when people try to rank it amongst all of the mainline games, it's usually at the bottom alongside RE6. However, even after all of the terrible things I said about this game, I still really enjoy it. It really shows just how amazing this franchise is. Even the worst game is still very enjoyable. The hospital section was a breath of fresh air. It was like a mini RPD, just a lot shorter and less interesting, but still really fun to go through. Also, Jill's monologue at the end makes me really excited for a remake of RE5. I need to see that Wesker fight in the new RE engine. So, what do you think of RE3 Remake? Do you agree with my own opinion? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. I hope you like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. But in any case, see you in the next one.